Welcome to the Corporate to Coach podcast. I'm Pamela, a former corporate professional turned certified life and business coach and mentor. If you're ready to sign clients, grow your soul-led coaching business, and shed the employee identity so you can step fully into business ownership, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Corporate to Coach podcast. I am very excited to bring on today's special guest, Alisha Sheri. She is a nervous system-based coach and host of the Break the Cycles podcast. She helps women understand and break toxic relationship patterns rooted in childhood conditioning and generational dynamics. Through her AAA method, which we'll be diving in later today in the episode, where she covers awareness, alignment, and ascension, Alisha guides clients from recognizing their patterns to creating lasting embodied change. Her work bridges emotional healing with real-life application, helping women rebuild self-trust and choose differently. Alisha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And you are dialing in all the way from Hawaii?
Yes, I am.
How beautiful. Okay, you are officially my first guest from Hawaii. So this is very, very
Yay.
exciting for me. So
Yes. Yes,
let's
I love
dive
it.
in with setting some context for the audience so they understand a bit more about your background. I was really intrigued when you said you come from an engineering background. And now you're a coach. I freaking love the complete range of career histories that coaches have and how different it is when we do the work that is like soul-led, the work that lights us up, that we end up building businesses around. But tell us about your journey from going from engineering into coaching.
Yeah, I get that a lot. And, as a child, I went through, it was kind of a tough childhood. And I think that's what brought me into initially, as I entered adulthood, I had I got pregnant straight out of high school. So I was trying to break the cycle of being broke and being, raised in poverty. I didn't want that for my kid. So I panicked and I went into chasing the money, chasing the title, chasing, things that I thought would help me give my child a childhood that I never had. And that's why I got into IT and engineering, and it bloomed. I was really good at what I did. I felt like, well, on the surface, it looked like I had it all together. I was always chasing these titles, and I made my way into leadership, and my career took off. Like, my career was blooming. And on the surface, it seemed fine. Everyone was like, "Oh, you're so lucky. You have everything. You're a single mom. You have a great career." But inside, I felt depleted. I felt drained because I supported the DOD, the warfighter, and I just felt like I was always in these toxic environments. I was a young minority woman leading older retired military personnel, or trying to compete and have a voice in these environments where it just wasn't in our favor as women in general, right? High ranking officials, and you got to prove yourself before people take you serious. And so it was very draining, very depleting. And not only that, as I got, into my healing journey, like you said, as we do the soul work, I just felt like it didn't align. Like, I was like, this is not who I want to be. This is not how I want to show up in life. This is not what I want to leave the world being remembered as. And, my career is great. It did amazing things. It opened a lot of doorways, but I just got to a place where I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to do it anymore. And, it was really hard to walk away because, the majority of my life, I built this career. The last 18 years, I built it from the ground up. And I put all this, time and effort and money in these degrees and these certifications. And just to get to one of the highest positions I was, to realize I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
So it was hard to let go, just like any of us, right? It's an identity that we build while we're in survival mode. and we built several of them, but this one was, I'm not gonna lie, it was really hard to get rid of, stable income and a big income at that. And to just let go and walk away it was hard, very
That's
hard.
a really brave decision. I'm curious, was it a gradual letting go? Like, had you started the business already when you left, or was it you took the you came to this realization, left, and then began coaching?
Yeah, so for the last, I want to say last 5 years that I was in the corporate world, I felt it. And not only that, I think it started as a calling from God, the universe. Like it literally was like one day I woke up and I just kept hearing this whisper, like, you're made for more. You're made for something different. And, as I went through all this trauma, it really was a lot of grief that I went through. I was just like, I feel like I need to help people, right? And in the corporate world, I was helping the war fighter, which was great. It's something I always wanted to do, but I felt like I needed to help people and help people get to this point of ascension. And so it started as a calling, as a whisper, and I didn't answer it because again, we don't like walking away from our norm. That's the hard part. That's why a lot of us don't change. And I was like, well, I kept hearing this whisper. I'm like, how am I supposed to do it? And it was just like, you're gonna figure it out. Once you start it, it's just gonna things are gonna align. And I didn't listen because, I was a single mom at the time, in Hawaii, with two daughters. And I was like, I can't just walk away. And people say, well, you keep your 9 to 5 while you have your 5 to 9 until you can leave your 9 to 5. Right. But I was like, as a single mom in an engineering leadership role where I'm managing different engineers from not only Hawaii, but Korea, Japan, even Australia, I had engineers in all these different time zones. I wasn't working just 8 hours a day. I was working more like 12 to 16, managing chats and trying to run a team. And I tried that, but I just couldn't do it. So I started my LLC. I got like the legal stuff, the license and all that stuff like in 2023. And I was just like trying to do it. And I just couldn't. And then like maybe 3, 4 years later, um, things just started aligning. Like I was single for a long time and I met my current husband at my last job, which was crazy because I didn't want to take this position and I thought like, okay, something's pulling me to just take it. And honestly, when I met him, everything just unfolded. He saw that, I was made to do what I'm doing. He supported it. Um, we knew instantly when we saw each other, we were, a match. We were definitely our soulmates. And everything just aligned after that. He was like, look, you need to focus on this because I know this is what you're made for. And he's like, just leave and focus on that. Like we integrated our families, we moved in together. And that was a piece that why I couldn't walk away. Like a lot of us can't, right? Let's be real. We have bills to pay, we have family to support, and everything just aligned. And that's when I didn't just walk away, but again, when you have a calling and you don't answer, I believe that God and the universe puts things in places for you to force you to answer. So I didn't quit my job. I was actually wrongfully terminated. And it literally blew everyone, like took everyone by shock because it was literally off of the email I just sent. So it was totally wrong. um, but I took it as a sign. And sure, in the DoD, I can easily go find another job. I get job offers till this day because of my skill set. But I felt like it was also a test from God. Like, are you going to answer this calling or are you going to go back to what's comfortable? And I was at a place, like I said, I just felt supported for once in my life. Like I could walk away, not worry about the bills, the financial part for a period of time to just focus on this. And that's how it all unfolded.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And how amazing that these things unfold. Did it immediately feel like it was a sign, like a good sign? Because when being fired is, I mean, in my experience and when I witnessed it, I used to be in HR and in recruitment, I've seen it a lot. For most
Mhm.
people, that is a tough situation. It feels shit because it's not your choice. And I think the choice thing is so important. So the fact that you've been able to tell that story is something that empowered you and that it was a sign for you to follow your calling is incredible. Was it like that in the moment, or did it take a hot second to come to that trust and that belief?
Well, because like I know this calling started, like I said, 4 years before. So I knew that not only that, I just knew showing up to work the last 3, 4 years was really hard. And not only that, this last position I took was with the force command, a joint force command. So it was heavily demanding.
Mm,
And I knew that if I wasn't going to leave the corporate world, I had to get out of this position because it was so toxic. And they were doing things that were not right. So I knew that I didn't want to support that leadership. Um, and so when I did get wrongfully terminated, um, I was upset because like I said, 18 years in this career, I've never been written up and never had any kind of bad evaluation, performance review, nothing. I was good at what I did. And even my immediate supervisor and leadership supported it, but it was beyond them because I just didn't fit the good boys club,
mm,
right? I spoke about things that weren't right. So it felt, I was really angry, but it felt okay, okay, I was like, okay, God, I have a relationship with God. And I was like, I see what you're doing here. Because I believe that you will get isolated sometimes and people will move out of your life and things will move out of your life, especially when it's your norm, so that you can now step into the role, to your purpose, to your dharma. And so having that mindset, I was just like not worried about this stuff. I was just like, I'm angry, I'm sad because they didn't even give me an option just to leave, which they knew I was leaving. I had expressed I was going to leave. I was looking for another job, but they didn't allow me to leave on my own terms.
mm.
They pushed me out. So I was definitely offended, but I also knew that it was divine timing and alignment. So with that, and once you know that things happen for a reason, I don't think you lead without emotion.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know for a fact there are coaches in my audience who have who have gone through something really similar recently and in their past, and it's always interesting to see what the anger is trying to tell you, as the anger is warranted when
Hmm.
it's been unfair. It's unfair. Like, it feels unfair. That's There is an emotion attached with that. But I love the way that you transmuted that. Did you need to do any practices? Was there any, I don't know, cord cutting? Was there anything that you tangibly practically did to help you come to this empowering way of viewing it? Or was it time? Or was it just the way that you were processing and thinking about the situation?
I think it was all the build, like just my healing journey, right? My healing journey started like I want to say, or I got deep into my healing journey started about 6 years ago, and that's when I started doing a lot of breath work, yoga. I really changed my lifestyle, like in terms of moving my body, eating nutritious food, and stuff like that. So I think as I evolved in that space, it helped not help, it did change my mindset on things, even how I showed up at work as a leader. Because before I started healing, I was very masculine, I was very alpha, I was very like, I was very direct aggressive because that's the role I had to play in with the environment I was in. But I think I started to soften, and I think I started to listen instead of react, and I just had this whole shift of, I want to say, a new person because it's always within us. I want to say I fully shifted into my true, authentic self, my
Mm,
higher self. And I think once you're there, there's no going back, right? There's no going back to your survival modes, your survival. You see it, you feel it, you live it, you are aligned in it. There's no going back after that. And I think because of that, I was able to process this differently. And that's where, not only that, that's where I started to be grateful that all the work I've done in my healing journey, because it's not easy, But I think that's where I started realizing it paid off, because normally I would have handled it completely different.
Yeah, I can imagine. I bet there was a version of you. If this had happened like 10 years ago, it would have been a very different set of
Yeah.
events. Yeah. Fair. Oh,
Yeah.
that is incredible. And I can totally imagine it. So I know what it is as well to be in corporate and to have to see the shift internally, like the habits we do, having a morning routine, having meditating, you said breath work, yoga, like
Mhm.
just who we become shifts, and then as life continues to unfold, we just handle things differently. And actually, when we compare that to the version of us from 10 or 15 years ago, those same set of circumstances would have created very different results. So thank you for sharing your journey into coaching. And so now you're doing, I saw that you do one-to-one, you do groups, and you've got your AAA method. Would you be able to share a bit more about your method that you developed?
Yeah, so the method came, and once I started healing, I started getting these downloads and these messages. And I would actually, and I'm in paradise, so I would go to the beach a lot, and that's where I would go to the beach by myself without my kids, and I would spend the whole day there, and I'd do a whole cleansing thing with the ocean. And I started to get a lot of my downloads, and something came out. It was a triple A method. Um, and I was just like, I honestly, it was a download. I was like, hey, we know we go through phases in our healing journey. And to me, through people that I've had, with coaches and mentors and guides, I feel like we're all in the same room trying to get to the same end goal. We just have different approaches. And I think what I realized is that with the triple A method, I was like, everyone goes through this. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your culture, what your background is. I believe we go through these three phases, and you can't skip one. Because in my healing journey, I tried to bypass a lot of things. I was just like, let me just not do this. I don't want to go here. I'm going to just try to. And it doesn't work like that. Healing does not work like that. So the first one is awareness. And I believe that you have to build awareness, because you can't change what you don't see. You have to go back and connect the dots and ask yourself, why are you like this? Whether it's, you're attracting the same type of partner, whether you're stuck and you keep finding yourself in these dead end careers that don't fulfill you, or you're like me in a career where you're like, okay, this isn't who I want to be, or whether it's how you show up in your parenthood. I mean, it's all unique to each individual, but why do you keep repeating these same patterns? Why do you keep reacting? Why do you keep not listening and leading from your emotions, right? And so the awareness is kind of broken down into four steps, and isolation's the first one, refinement, realignment, and then revelation, where the true awakening, I believe, happens. And then the second phase is alignment. And I believe this is really the hardest transformation for a lot of us, because awareness, I don't want to say it's easy. None of this is easy, but awareness is where you're just kind of connecting the dots. You're going back, why am I like this? What showed up in my childhood? Maybe it's the way my parents, parented me. And then you start thinking, well, maybe it's the way their parents, my grandparents parented them. So, you're connecting those dots back in your lineage, and you're going back to those moments, but you're not reliving those moments just yet. So the awareness stage is like, okay, people can do that. But the alignment stage is where you got to actually put to action the things that you just became aware of. Right. And I think that's the hardest part, because you have to come out of your norm. You have to come into a space that's going to be uncomfortable, and you have to stay in that space until you make it comfortable. And I think the human body response is always fight or flight, right? It's like, ooh, I don't want to go in there. Ugh, this is uncomfortable. So I'm going to step back. And I think that's why we teeter totter into these two phases. And I think if people just realized that you are literally rebuilding yourself from the inside out. You are literally repowering what you've been conditioned to be or to show up. And that ain't easy.
Mm.
Because when you think about it, like I didn't start my healing journey until I was like 33. So that's like half of your lifespan. You've been doing and showing up in this world as someone that's not even your true authentic self because of the way you've been raised or your background, or you know what I mean? So you're carrying all this generational trauma on top of that, and ancestor trauma that's not even yours to carry. So um the alignment phase is really hard to not only get into, I think, for a lot, but to stay there. And then the next phase is ascension. And I believe ascension, kind of how my story, it kind of comes naturally. Once you're in alignment, you're now choosing the people that you want in your energy field. You're now choosing the environments that regulate your nervous system. You choose to be here. You're not forcing it because you have to. I think once you stay in alignment, your mind gets quieter. You get more connected with, earth, God, universe, and you start getting these downloads, messages. And I think that's where you can start hearing clearly. And that's how you kind of come to your calling, your dharma, your purpose, whatever you want to call it. And I think that just kind of flows naturally.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that it's for everyone. It's like, you just leave your corporate job and become a coach. Sometimes that could mean just showing up in the community more, or being more vulnerable and expressive to share your story, to touch other people. Maybe it's, finding a church, finding a community of women, or whatever it is that makes you feel better that you never done before, or doing something in return for the things that you've learned and the experiences you've gone through, to kind of pay that forward. And so that's the framework I came up with. And I just feel that we all go through those phases no matter where you're at in your healing journey. And I try to skip, because in the alignment phase we kind of go and do like inner child, I call it parts healing, but I think that's the biggest piece is healing your inner child. We have an inner teen, we also have an inner adult. And I think that was a piece where, as I started therapy, I didn't want to go back to revisit my childhood. There's things, and just like, but you have to. We
Yeah.
have to talk about it. We have to feel the emotions. And I tried to bypass that. I was like, no, I don't want to. Like, I'm just going to keep going. But that's the biggest piece, because we're carrying those parts that are not healed with us, and they're leading in our adulthood. They literally are leading.
Mm.
80% of the time, the reaction is your inner child, not the adult self. So that's why I came up with this. And I kind of reverse engineered it to make it like, hey, I can share this with my clients, and I'm not just going to throw a framework at you. We're going to actually have a way to go step by step. And every individual needs more time in one phase than the other. So it's very catered. And that's why I offer group and one on one coaching, to kind of make sure everybody has a unique container that will get them to where they need to be.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I resonate with a lot of what you've said. There is everything you've said is everything I agree with. I love the way that you've pulled that together through your ascension, through your triple A model. It is it feels really logical, and I think that's possibly the engineer coming through. It makes sense, it's structured, it's
Probably,
easy to
yeah.
digest, and I also know from lived experience it's not just as simple as 1 2 3. Like, this is the power of having the guidance and taking each part of that journey gently, with compassion, and starting with one area, whatever area of your life it's the doorway to going through a model like that. It might be
Hmm.
one thing that encouraged you to start. It's going to infiltrate every area of your life and change you in beautiful ways. I'm curious to know, you mentioned one example when you said about if you try and skip any stage of this, you're just bypassing the work. And you gave the example of people sometimes not wanting to go into their childhood, which I get it. I've seen it. I've had clients as well who have just said to me, I don't want to go into any of the inner child work. And we can navigate it just about, but there is a time and they always eventually end up going there, but you've got to be willing to do it. And
Hmm.
that's the key. You can't force this work either. But what other examples are there of how people might be bypassing for anyone listening today who's even coaches, we also always are doing this work. Where else, what are other signs that they're like bypassing the work when actually this is a potentially the wake up call they need to slow down and take the time to come and go through these stages?
Yeah, well, like I said, it all starts, it's all where it starts, right? And I honestly believe that trauma starts the moment you are conceived in your mother's womb. And I don't even think a lot of people understand that. So when
Okay.
we're born into this world, right, we are already carrying trauma from our past generations that our mother or our grandmother didn't even heal, right? Those wounds are being passed down to us. So we're already carrying the trauma that's not even ours. Then we
Mm.
go through childhood and we develop more trauma, right? And then we go into our teenage years and it just keeps building, building, building. So as, depending on how people's upbringing was, most of the time it's you're not going to develop resources to regulate your nervous system, right? As a child, we don't understand that stuff. We just know, we see what we want to do, we do it. Um, and I think a lot of us go into adulthood just we're dysregulated. At the end of the day, I think the key in healing and doing the deeper work is nervous system regulation. You can't do anything without that. So sometimes I see people, I get clients where they're trying to do the regulation, right? They're doing the yoga, they're doing the breath work, they're eating right, they're going to the gym, nourishing their body, but something's still missing. And I hear this a lot with my clients. And to me, I think what they're trying to bypass is where it all started, right? And that's that inner part, the parts healing. Where did it start? Well, if you're very angry all the time, where did that start? Were you angry as a child? Yeah. Why? Because my parents, I didn't have a safe space. I didn't feel protected. Okay. Let's start there. Right. Because you can have all these tools in your toolkit to regulate your nervous system, which is great. But I don't think that's where you start. And that's why I tell everyone you have to heal at the root first. And you can do it. So obviously you want to keep your nervous system regulated through it all. But I think that's the biggest thing that people bypass is where did this start? Even, it could be trauma that's not healed from a divorce, from a loss, right? I mean, trauma comes in so many forms. And if we don't give our time and the space to process that emotion, right? Because every day there's going to be stressors and there's going to be emotions. We can't control that, whether it comes from trauma or it comes from even recent events that unfolded in our life. But we have to learn how to accept it. We have to learn how to process the emotion, embody the emotion. And that's the key part. We have to feel that emotion. I'm not saying stay there because that can lead to deep depression and stuff like that, but know that you need to embody it and stay with it long enough to feel it and then know how to release it.
Mm.
And I think that's what a lot of people are carrying all this trauma and it comes with those emotions and they're leading with those emotions. And you can go and have, self-care days and spa treatments and do all this energy work. It's going to feel good, obviously, right? But something's still going to feel off. You're still repeating these patterns because you haven't got to the root.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely
Mhm.
agree with the getting to the root. And something you just said, which I think is so powerful that I don't speak about too often on the podcast, is being able to feel your emotions and accept them and then know how to release them. Probably because that's some of the hardest work I've had to do in the last year. So it's not I'm always so passionate about making sure I'm fully embodied in something before I speak as an expert in something. But feeling your emotions has been for me one of the biggest challenges I've had. And it is a weird thing to say, I think, like unless you're in the coaching industry. I don't know. I don't know if this is like what normal people or people that are not in coaching think about, but the ability to feel an emotion, it is surprisingly hard. I think, but then again, that's probably just a reflection of my lack of skill in it. I I'm so logical, I'm so intellectual, so intelligent. I've done so much inner child work and so much parts work. I know the origin, I know the stories. The awareness, like you said, is probably the easier part. The alignment part, I
Mhm.
think, is where the feeling of your emotions comes in. And it is hard to allow yourself to feel disappointment or failure or anger, frustration. Like none of these emotions are pleasant feelings. So it is no surprise that we try and bypass them, buffer them, ignore them, all the good stuff, try and force our way through, especially for everyone here who's building their business. You might have a
Mhm.
disappointment with a client relationship or a workshop or a launch. And if you don't allow yourself to feel it, it's so easy to then push and force your way through into the action taking and just running into the next step in relationships. It might look like disappointment, failure from a relationship breakdown, and then either avoiding relationships altogether or plowing into the next one, and you haven't felt the emotion to fully release it and
Mhm.
process it. Can you speak a little bit more about how does somebody feel an emotion? Because they just happen, right? Like, share your
Yeah.
expertise on this. I have views, but we're here to showcase you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think this is where the energy work comes into, right? Um if we're in the corporate world and I was there, we're just pushing through, like you said, pushing through. We're not giving our time to feel anything. At least I wasn't. I was constantly on the go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it wasn't
it's not like
until
we can just quit and well, I mean, we can
yeah.
quit, but if we're not quitting, it's like, well, I still have work tomorrow. I still got to get this email out. I've still got to get got to go to this meeting at
Hmm.
4:30
Hmm.
p.m. Like, yeah, it's physically hard because the time is occupied. So I get that for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like independent, right? Like I grew up very independent. So not only did the corporate world make me that way, just life in general, right? I did a lot of things as a child that I shouldn't, a lot of the responsibility was on me. But then I had a child straight out of high school, so it was like I was super independent. I was super on the go go. Coming home from work, I had to do mama duties, and it was just constant go go. And so I never got to feel my emotions. Not only that, I was really raised to not. I wasn't raised to process my emotions. I didn't have a safe space where I could express myself. I didn't, my dad's side, there was a lot of generational anger there. So there was a lot of suppression. So I think that's what we do when we don't know how to process or feel emotions. We suppress them, which makes it even worse. And it wasn't until I understood how energy moves through the body until I had a Reiki session. I literally got to a point in my life where I felt I went through a short period of time where I had a lot of loss and grief. I didn't know how to handle it. And I felt for once in my life that I was going to lose it. Like I didn't have control. And I started realizing why people commit suicide, why people turn to drugs, because they just want to numb it. They don't want to feel it. And I think that's the problem we have. We choose not to feel it. And so I had a Reiki session, and it's when I got into energy healing. And I never felt what true regulation felt like until I had this session. And it was 1 hour and it felt like multiple hours. But when I woke up, I felt so light and I got all these visions and all these different downloads. And I just felt like, honestly, felt like a new person. And after I felt that, I said, I need to know how I could feel this all the time. Like, and that's when I started getting into all these practices. But what it taught me is that the way emotions hit our body first. They don't hit our mind. We think it hits our mind first because how we react, right?
Mm,
And we think about it. But the stressors and the emotions hit our body. And not only do they hit our body first, they store in our body. So energy is supposed to flow like, when you turn on your sink, you have all the way, you turn it all the way on, the water's flowing. Like you see it coming out, right? But as these stressors hit our body starts to signal warning signs. And that's when that water, you to go back to the sink, it slows down. So let's say you turn it a little bit. It's not flowing as much. That's how the energy, when you hit these emotions coming, you don't release them, you don't feel them and process them, you now are causing stagnation.
mm,
And then what do we do naturally? We go and we try to suppress it, whether we drink, we smoke, we whatever, we party, go out with our girls, try to not worry about it. That causes even more buildup. So now that stagnation, that decrease of energy flow is now just stopped. So instead of the warning signs, like your warning signs can look like maybe tension in the back, tightness in the chest, locked jaw a lot. Um, those warning signs then go to alerts.
mm,
Okay, now you're like, okay, suppressing it. It's like now I have barely any kind of energy flow. Now you go to mind racing, right? I think we all been there. We go to bed, but our mind is not ready for bed. It's bracing. It's bracing for the next impact. It's coming up with plan C, D, you know, in case A, B falls. You're just like constantly preparing for impact,
mm,
mind racing. And then, maybe it looks like anger. You're snapping at people. You're snapping at people at work, snapping at your kids. You're reacting instead of listening. So again, more stressors come through the day, through the weeks, through the months. Still, you haven't even released any emotions that are stored in your body. So now you're just come to a point where there's no energy flow. There's this blockage.
mm,
And then those alerts go to threats now, because now you're like, okay, which can lead to illnesses, mental health. I've seen it in my family. I've seen it. My mom was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia anxiety disorder growing up. And at the time, I was like, where did this come from? But as I started healing, I started realizing, the choices that my mom made. And I started connecting the dots of the trauma that she had from, her childhood. And I was like, well, no wonder she had got diagnosed with this. She wasn't born with it. She literally got diagnosed. I think she was like 30 some years old at the time. And I always wondered why. And that's a perfect example of like she never released this emotion. She never processed her emotions because she was always on the go, 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 trying to provide for me and my sister. And I was like, I don't want to be like that.
mm,
And in the corporate world, I felt all these signs and these alerts. I went through them all, even with mental illness. Like I think I got diagnosed with deep depression, anxiety disorder as well. And I was like, yeah, no. Like, no, I'm not gonna take this medication. I'm not gonna, so I think that's the most crucial part of keeping your energy flowing right in your body. And that is tied to processing the emotions and releasing it. because every day there's stressors. I mean, you can leave the house and get ticked off by someone cutting you off on the road. That is a stressor that hits the body, right? Any type of emotion. And then we can choose to lead with it, or we can choose to learn how to process and release it and go about our day, right? And then you're not like creating any kind of stagnation in your body. And I think that helps us make clearer decisions. We lead with intention. We can hear our voice of intuition. And I think that's why it's so important. I think that's what people don't understand.
Thank you for sharing. I feel very moved by everything you've shared. I can relate seeing my mum and the physical ailments that she has. And when you said your mum got diagnosed in her 30s, it was similar for me. And it that is younger than me now. I'm now older than my mum was when she started showing these signs of a life that isn't sustainable, not because the things in her life are bad, but because of her ability to process emotion and move through the stories from her childhood. This is generational work. And I must admit, I don't remember that enough. And I don't remember the significance of what we're doing enough. I have a question for you that I am curious about. When it comes to the generational work, you mentioned about the stories that, even in womb, we are taking on generational trauma. What if you don't know the history? Not many people know this. I think this is the first time I've ever shared this ever in my business. I don't have any ties to my ancestral lineage. Um, and that's partly conscious choice, partly access. But I know there's stuff there. There's a lot there. And there's a lot with my mum that I'm very blessed to. She's still in my life. She's very active in my life. So I have her. But generations beyond that is an unknown. And on my father's side, it's completely unknown. What, how do you process something that you don't know or don't have access to logically or consciously? Because it's still in the body, right? The body's still carrying it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and that's a good question. And um, I was blessed enough to experience my grandparents, right? And some of it even my great grandparents. But I think when it comes down to that, if you have no connection to that, or you just don't know, history is history, right? So even if you go back to, I don't know, maybe where your family's from, and you go back to those years, what was going on in the world at that time in that place,
Mm,
right? Poverty, war,
mm,
slavery, whatever it was. At one point, my grandpa was picking cotton. So there's things that historical alone you can kind of understand just from that how what time and place were your ancestors being raised in, what environment were they being raised in, what was going on in the world, because what's going on in the world is all hitting us today. Everything, all this craziness that's going on, it is affecting us to a degree, right? And those are the type of things that you can kind of put into content. Not only that, but you can, if you're into energy work, there's mediums and there's readers, and if you don't believe in that, there's just the actions that you're taking, right? The actions that you're taking, it's all tied to something. And if you keep repeating the same pattern in a relationship, you can maybe, for me, I used to attract a lot of narcissists men because I was a people pleaser. And when I started connecting the dots, I realized that that was in my lineage. I saw my mom growing, I saw my mom being womanized. I saw a lot of the women in my family being womanized and being people pleasers. So to me, that's kind of, whether I would have known that or not, it's something that I was repeating and I was attracted to,
mm,
right? And I knew, for me, I knew, but if you didn't, maybe some people weren't raised by their mother or their grandma, they didn't have that. But I think it shows up in our actions. And like I said, there's resources out there. that can help you see that if you believe in energy work like that. But even just knowing the time and place and the years and what was going on, I think ties into that as well.
Yeah, yeah. And are you a Reiki practitioner?
I am,
You
yes,
are. Okay, amazing.
yes.
And can you do that online or is it just in person?
Online, yeah, distance. I mean, energy. There's no distance that energy cannot travel. So yeah, it could
Amazing.
be done both.
And do you weave that into your coaching, into your groups or one to one?
I do because for Reiki, I think like I said, for me, the reason I became Reiki practitioner is because of the impact it had on me. And I was, I grew up very traditional Christian Baptist, so we don't believe in that stuff. Like my family, on one side we were traditional Christian Baptist, but my grandmother's from Japan, and she was into like Buddhism. She was very spiritual. So I believe I kind of took in, the good of both worlds, right? But on the traditional side, with being a raised Christian Baptist, that was frowned upon. Any kind of energy work, working with crystals, working with energy, it was kind of like, eh. So I was very hesitant to get into the energy field, but I just felt like, what do I have to lose? And
Love that.
once I did and I saw the impact, like I said, I was in survival mode like the first, 32 years of my life. And that 1 hour changed everything for me. Like just that 1 hour of feeling calm and relaxed and getting my body, because a lot of us think we're sleeping at night, but we're not fully rested. Most of us aren't fully rested. That's why you still wake up, you feel tired because your body's not safe enough to just surrender and rest. Yeah, your eyes are closed, you might be snoring, but you're not really resting.
Yeah.
And so I do Reiki because I like people to feel that who haven't, right? People that are on the go, people who come from a corporate world or just don't have time to just decompress. And a lot of my clients, I mean, I could do it for 10, 20 minutes and sometimes they feel it and they're just like, wow, So I definitely, it's a support element. And again, it's like one tool in your toolkit to regulate your nervous system because I believe that we need many. And it has to be something that, you actually benefit from, right? So yeah, that inspired me to get my certification so that I could give people that feeling and let them know that they could really tap into this with or without Reiki.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So many takeaways today. Thank you. So, how can people find you and work with you?
So I can be found on all social media platforms, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I have the same tag name, and that's I am Alisha Sheri. And then my website is alishasheri.com that has all of my I have free resources on there. I have, kind of like deeper work on one-on-one coaching. I have workshops and boot camps and all that good stuff. You can find the link to my podcast as well. And yeah,
Amazing. And your podcast name again is?
break the cycles.
Break the Cycles. Incredible. Alicia, thank you so much for joining me on the Corporate to Coach podcast today. It has been a really valuable conversation. The breakdown of everything that you've provided has been so thorough. And I know a lot of people are going to really resonate with your journey. I certainly do. And I've loved connecting with you. So thank you for joining me. And for everyone else, if you want to connect with me, you can find me at Coaching with Pamela on all the places as well. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next episode.